do you maintain these watches?
But when you're dealing with vintage watches, a lot of them include very, very easy to damage watch. They take a watch very carefully and then they're undoing the back. Springs start flying and parts go everywhere.
Greg, what are the few things that we should watch out for before buying a vintage watch?
Collect knowledge before you collect watches.
We're back yet again at the R Markers Collectors Corner with Gregory Selch for our second episode. Gregory, welcome back to the R Markers.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here.
So for those of you who don't know Gregory, he is a very, very passionate and knowledgeable vintage watch collector. One could almost say he's kind of done his scholarship with vintage watches. So these episodes are basically for us to learn, and by us, I mean all of us, including me, to learn more about the art of vintage watches, the art of collecting vintage watches, and so on. So the last episode, Greg, you explained to us about what vintage watches are, what antique watches are, and neo-vintage. And of course, we got to see some of the amazing watches in your collection. Today, I want to ask you about maintaining vintage watches. How do you maintain these watches? Because they're clearly not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're clearly not as durable as modern watches.
Yes, it certainly is a challenge for many people to get into collecting watches. When you buy a new watch, generally, there's a warranty. There might even be service. Some watch dealers will offer service afterwards. You bring it in for scheduled service and this and that. But when you're dealing with vintage watches, a lot of times you are buying other people's problems. You're buying other people. The history of the watch may include things that you can't necessarily see. Things like water damage. It could have been, this is a terrible thing for a vintage watch collector, but it may have been repaired by someone who doesn't know what they're doing. It's very, very easy to damage a watch by not knowing how to handle it. I'm not saying that you have to be an expert, but at least careful. And some people aren't careful. Some people even repair their own watches. It's a temptation we have. Oh, I'll just open it up and do so. Don't. That's usually a very bad idea unless you have a lot of experience or training. There's a famous saying once that I heard once, many people know it, but they said, there's only two types of people who will open a vintage watch: a watchmaker or an idiot. That I open mine. I have to say, maybe I'm an idiot, but I do open them. I like to look and see the numbers. But what it means is there are times, honestly, I've even heard watchmakers say this. They take a watch very carefully and then they're undoing the back and they take the back off and suddenly springs start flying and parts go everywhere. That is a nightmare. You'll never, that watch, you're in big trouble now because you'll never find those little parts. So my advice on handling, first of all, maintaining a vintage watch, first of all, is if it's not your watch, you bought it from somebody else, my advice is to take it to a watchmaker. Not to have them say, oh, is it real? Is it not real? To look at it and just see, is it clean? Is it running properly? Has it had, might need adjustment? It might need a little oil. I'm not sure they use oil in watches, but it may need a little lubrication of some kind. And so taking it to a watchmaker that you trust, one, a watchmaker that will not polish the case, a watchmaker who will not change parts without asking you first. Do not, my opinion, vintage watch, do not take a watch to somebody and say, fix this watch. You will get it back. It will look very different from when you gave it to them. And that is a problem. So somebody who's careful that you know, take it to the watchmaker, have them just look at it. They can put it on their desk. They can wear it a little bit. Okay. Once you have a baseline, unless it's from a collection, it's running fine. Many watches I buy, they've been taken good care of. They're running fine. Don't mess with it. Don't mess with it. But if you take it to a watchmaker, now, when you have gotten it back from the watchmaker or you're satisfied with it, wear it. Wear it a lot. Wear it under different circumstances. Wear it, don't move around. Wear it walking around, because watches are adjusted for different angles. They'll keep time in any angle. Sometimes they take a hit. It's on the end of your wrist. It's a very dangerous place to keep a precision tool on the end of a long, 3 foot long thing that's swinging around. That's why people used to wear pocket watches. You keep it very close to you in your pocket. It doesn't get damaged. Imagine going to war, and you have this delicate little not waterproof thing on the end of your wrist, and you're diving into the mud, and it's very, you really have to take care of them. But they are designed to run under all circumstances. That is to say, temperature changes, environmental changes, and they're supposed to not need too much maintenance. So once you have your watch running, it should be fine. My advice to anybody, honestly, is when you buy a watch, don't look for something that looks like new. My opinion. Don't look for something that looks like new, looks like it's been redone and everything like that, because generally that means that somebody else has done all the work for you and you have no idea what that work is. My advice to people buying watches is to try to buy a watch in as original a condition as you can find it. And if you need to, have it serviced yourself. That is a very important piece of advice. Have it serviced yourself. Don't buy something if you can. There are times when you want it, the price is good. If the price is good, always, my opinion, always get it. But if you have a choice between something that may need some service that looks original and something that's fully serviced and looks like new, I might go for the one that needs service and do it yourself. But find a good watchmaker. That's the number one.
Yeah, I've read all these different things online about vintage watches and how you need to be really gentle with them, keep them away from water. When changing the time, always do it clockwise, don't do it anti-clockwise. So these are the few, or maybe don't put them in a winder, keep it in a box. So these are the different things that you basically read up online. So are any of those true?
I would say some of those are very true. Of course, watches that are not designed to be water resistant or anything, be very careful with moisture. They have absolutely no protection. These were watches designed to be worn by people who sat in offices or were on ships in a stateroom, smoking cigars. I don't know, but be very careful with them. Rain will get right in there, and these parts rust in a split second. Even the humidity in the air can rust movement, and it will degrade it. And rust left untreated over time will eat. It's don't know if people know this, but when rust happens, it is an oxidization of the metal itself. It is not something that is on top of it. It is actually the metal itself is oxidizing. And so when you take the rust off, there are little holes in your metal. So you get rust on there, it can actually eat into the metal. I'm talking about steel and iron and things like that. There's a very important thing to remember with complicated watches. And what I mean by complicated watches is even if it has a date change, like at midnight, it changes to the next date. But particularly if it's a complicated with a moon phase, is this. Do not adjust the time. I mean, do not adjust the settings and things like that when the watch is between 6 p.m. and midnight, maybe even 2 or 3, because that is when all of the features of the watch are kind of loaded up. They're ready to go. And so when you start adjusting things, it can really mess things up. Okay. So if you have to change everything on a watch, try to set it for 9 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon or something like that. Do not do it before the midnight. Anytime around midnight is very dangerous and it can damage a delicate watch.
Great. Greg, what are the few things that we should watch out for before buying a vintage watch?
Before buying a vintage watch, of course, you know my philosophy, collect knowledge before you collect watches. The first thing, in my opinion, is to know who you're buying from. No matter whether you're the most expert, me, I go anywhere in the world and I go into a place and somebody starts telling me something about the watch. Oh, I got this from this person. Oh, it's never been worn. Here are the original papers. And then I have to trust this person because I wasn't there. I need to know that that person is going to tell me at least the truth about the existing situation. Now, if I get a sense that that person, they tell me some story and I think to myself, okay, I've heard that before, or he's telling me this watch belonged to that person and I actually know that person. That's not, if you know that the person is not telling you the truth, that doesn't mean you should say, I forget it, I'm done. Still could be a good watch, but understand that you can't trust them. So whenever I go to buy watches, first thing I try to do is to, this is an old collector trick, if you like. Don't focus on the thing you want. Don't go right in and say, what about that? Because the person will get the idea, oh, I need to sell him or her that thing. That is a bad idea. Be interested in something else. Maybe this one over here, maybe this diving watch. You want this chronograph, but what about this? Have them explain. They'll sell you all day long, and you can get a very, very good idea of what kind of person you're dealing with when they try to sell you the watch that you don't even want. And if you get an idea that maybe you do want that, maybe they're a good salesperson. It's, oh, wow, actually, I kind of do want that watch. Now you can say, yeah, I think I might be interested in that watch, but maybe there's something else here. Can you tell me about these other watches? And when they get to the watch that you're interested in, now you could say, oh, wow, that's really, yeah, I think it's an old trick. It sort of takes them away from their game, and it gets you to test your taste. Maybe you were wrong. Maybe you focused in on the wrong watch, and you're like, oh my gosh, thank God I didn't, because he would have sold me that watch, or she would have sold me that watch. Anyway, that's the first piece of advice in my view is go in, see what the person is doing, the person who's selling it for you. What do they like? How do they operate? The second thing is to have an idea of what these things look like. Have seen them on Instagram, in magazines, in books, maybe a friend of yours. Maybe if you come to New York, I'll show you some watches. You could see some watches in their original condition, unrestored. Now, when you see one let's say you see it online, you might be looking on a website. You got to know what the thing is supposed to look like before you make some kind of a thing, because the person selling it generally assumes that they have one, this is the one, they're going to try to sell it. They'll tell you anything to get it sold. You need to know. That's where the knowledge comes in, and knowledge includes experience, in my view.
Great, super. That's quite a trick right there.
It works with a lot of things. If you did like any,
Yeah.
I travel around the world, and I remember going to look at carpets. I looked at carpets, and you go into a carpet place. Never ever look at the one you want, and they'll try to sell you, and then you learn like what's good. What are they trying to sell you on? It's a good trick.
It's interesting. I'm going to keep that one in mind. Have you made any faux pas, mistakes in the initial stages of buying vintage watches?
Of course. Everyone does. Everyone has. The biggest mistakes that I ever made were where I thought that I knew more than somebody else, or I thought I was getting a really great deal. There's an old saying in things, when something looks like a really, like it's better than can be believed, it probably shouldn't be. Okay, it's
Too good to be true.
too good to be true. Exactly, it is too good to be true, and that is a problem. On the other hand, there's a reverse side of that, which is oftentimes the thing that you discounted, that you thought, oh, it doesn't, it's unfortunate. It's a really rare watch. I've always wanted one of those, but the 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 hands don't look like things I've seen before. But the price is good, and you think, okay, I'm not going to do. I don't want to mess with the other problems and things like that. That could be a mistake. Why? Well, first of all, those could be the original hands. It's just a very rare model. That has happened to me. The second thing is that it may be that those hands may be the only problem, and it is an incredibly rare watch at a super price. I would take any watch with the wrong hands or the wrong crown or something like that. If it's very rare and it's something that I've been looking for a long time, without being complete and original, I would do that. Now, as far as mistakes are concerned, another big mistake is to get too excited about something, because oftentimes our first instinct is we discover something new, and then we have to look everywhere. We're looking everywhere. Oh my God, I just found this. I saw somebody had this watch. Now I'm doing a lot of research. And then you find someone who has it and you think, oh yeah, I just have to get it. You get it. And then you think to yourself, well, gosh, now I have this. I don't need another one. And then you start to see, oh, actually, there are more out there. They just haven't been discovered yet. People haven't taken them out. And now you have one. You don't really need two. So getting too excited, it can be a problem. There's a flip side to that as well. Sometimes it is a very rare watch. And in one case, there was one watch I was looking for where I saw one and it had already been sold. I saw it, I said, oh my gosh, I've never seen that before. It had already been sold. The next one I saw was very expensive, it's a jeweler, a real fancy place. And I called and they were like, it just sold. I said, oh my God, next time I can't wait. I gotta go, right away. And so in fact, the next time one came up, I just said, I'm not going to let this thing go. And I just kept on working it and working it. I traded a lot of stuff. I made it such a good deal. This person couldn't go anywhere else. So, sometimes you have to actually pursue the thing, but you have to know it's very rare.
A few of your watches that you want to show us today.
Really fun watch. Omega Constellation.
Wow.
People like Royal Oaks. Oh, I can get one in solid gold. It would cost you a fortune. These are 10% of the price. Rally watch. It's got a lot of stuff going on.